Hey, welcome to Giraffe Academy. My name is Mike. In this tutorial, I'm going to talk to you guys about the basics of Ruby programs. So we're going to write a very simple Ruby program. We're going to talk about how those programs get executed, the order in which the instructions in those programs get executed. We're also going to talk about different ways that we can print things out onto the screen. So it's going to be a pretty awesome tutorial. I'm really excited. First thing I want to show you guys is how to print something out onto the screen. So you'll notice over here I have my little Atom Runner output window. And in the last tutorial we talked about setting up this basic environment. So what I want to do is show you guys how to print something out onto this little console window over here. So all we have to do to print something out is just type print, a space, and then if you want to print out like plain text, we can just make an open and close quotation marks, and we can put any text we want. So I could put like Giraffe Academy here. And now when I run this program by clicking Control R, you'll see that Giraffe Academy gets printed out onto the screen over here. There's also another way that we can print something out onto the screen. So in addition to just saying print, I could also say puts. And puts basically works the same way as print. It's going to take whatever we put inside of these quotation marks and it's going to print it out onto the screen. So for example, I could type my name like Mike, and now this is going to get printed out onto the screen over here. Now you'll notice that Giraffe Academy and Mike are getting printed out right next to each other. And this actually brings me to the first thing I want to talk about, which is the difference between print and puts. So you'll notice here I'm using this print command. I'm printing out Giraffe Academy, and then right below it I'm printing out Mike using this puts command. And when I use this print command, Mike just gets printed out right next to Giraffe Academy, as you can see over here. But if I was to take this puts command and move it up here right above Giraffe Academy, so now the program's going to execute puts Mike before it executes Giraffe Academy, what you'll notice is that Giraffe Academy gets printed out on a new line. That's because whenever you use this puts command, it's going to print out whatever you put over here, and it's also going to print out a new line afterwards, which basically means that when you use puts, you can print things out on different lines. When you use print, however, everything gets printed out on the same line. So if I wanted to print out two things right next to each other, for example, I could print out something over here like is cool. Now, these are going to get printed out right next to each other. So you can see it says Giraffe Academy is cool. But if I was to do the same thing with puts, for example, if I did another puts down here and I said is cool, because I'm using this puts up here, this is actually going to get printed out onto a new line. So you'll see down here, that's exactly what happens. So that's the two different ways that we can print something out onto the screen, using prints and using puts. Again, puts will print out whatever you specify, and then it'll print out a new line. Print will just print out whatever you specify, no new line. So that's the basic difference between those two. So now what I want to do is just show you how we can use these print statements to draw a little shape out onto the screen. So over here, I'm just going to say puts, and I'm going to make an open and close quotation mark, and I'm actually going to copy this a couple times. So we'll paste this like a few times down below here. And I want to show you guys how we can just draw a basic like triangle shape. So I'm going to start with a forward slash down here, and I'll make another forward slash, another one up here, and another one there. And now I'm just going to make vertical bars going all the way down. And I'm going to make some underscores down here. And now we have a basic little triangle right here. So you can see I'm using this puts statement, and individually on each one of these lines, I'm printing out some text. So now if I was to go over here and run my program, you'll notice that we're printing out this triangle, and it looks pretty good. So this is sort of the basics of drawing something out onto the screen. I also want to talk to you guys about how these programs get executed. So when we run our Ruby program or our Ruby script, basically what happens is Ruby's going to go through and it's going to look at each line individually inside of this script. It's going to start with the first line here. So it's going to say, okay, the first instruction that the user wants me to do is print this line of text out onto the screen. So Ruby's going to look at this first instruction, it's going to execute it, and then once it's done with this instruction, it's going to move on to the next instruction. So it's moving on to the next line. And it's going to go ahead and execute this instruction. And then when it's done with this one, it's going to move on to the next line and the next line, etc. So Ruby is looking through each instruction that we give it inside of our program. And an instruction in Ruby is just something like this. It's like this puts or that print that we saw before. And there's tons of these different instructions that we can give Ruby. But the point is that Ruby's going to execute them in the order that we write them. So Ruby's going to start with this line, move on to this line, etc. So if I was to take this bottom line here and move it up here to the top, now it's going to execute this line of code first. So you'll see over here, we get this like funky looking shape. So that's sort of like the bare basics of how Ruby is working. We're giving it sets of instructions, right? I'm just writing out a bunch of different instructions, and Ruby's going to execute them in order, and it's going to do essentially whatever we tell it to do. So right now, all we're doing is telling Ruby to print something out onto the screen. But as we learn more about Ruby and as we go forward and we learn more instructions that we can give it, we can actually make programs to do just about anything. So as long as you can specify specific enough instructions for the computer, you can do anything inside of a programming language. And that's kind of like the core concept that I wanted to give you guys today, which is how these programs are structured and how to write essentially a basic program that prints a shape out onto the screen. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe to Draft Academy to be the first to know when we release new content. Also, we're always looking to improve, so if you have any constructive criticism or questions or anything, leave a comment below. Finally, if you're enjoying Draft Academy and you want to help us grow, head over to draftacademy.com/contribute and invest in our future.